Welcome back to the Be Ruthless Show. I'm your host, Sam Ruth, and joining me today is Rick Cheatham, a seasoned life and career transformation coach. Rick brings a wealth of experience from a diverse background as a fire captain and union president in Anaheim, California. With a deep commitment to servant leadership, Rick specializes in crisis management, guiding over 200 union members through some of the most challenging periods in the union's history. Having overcome personal battles with addiction, financial bankruptcy, and the devastating loss of a child, Rick channels these experiences into empowering others. Married to Kelly for nearly 4 decades, Rick's journey embodies resilience and unwavering persistence, offering clarity and direction to those navigating life's complexities. Thank you so much for being here and everything you do.
Well, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here with you and your audience today.
What's it like out there in California?
Well, I'm not in California.
You're not?
No, I retired from California in November of 2020. I retired from Anaheim Fire Department out there and moved to Nashville, Tennessee, and opened up an Airbnb as part of my retirement to help offset some of the income needs. And my wife and I have been here now for a little over 3.5 years, coming up on 4 years, actually.
Wow. A lot of made changes during that time. Was yours planned or was yours a result of everything going on in the world?
Say that to me one more time so I can hear it. I don't think I heard it right.
Was that planned? Or was that a result of everything going on with COVID at that time?
Well, I was at the end of my career, so I was already looking toward retirement probably within the next year or two. And COVID hit, and Anaheim being a city that its resources on the budgetary side stem quite a bit from the tax revenue that we collect through Disneyland. When Disneyland closed down, our city got a little apprehensive and needed to be a little bit proactive in how they were going to navigate this. So they offered a lot of us guys who were on the fence of retiring. They gave us a golden handshake. They asked us if we would be willing to leave early. And if so, this was what they were willing to offer. And because of everything that I had gone through, I jumped at the offer. I was ready to make a change. I was ready to leave California, leave the memories of the trauma that I experienced through the murder of my son out there. It just gave me a new start. And part of the story, as we'll get into this, is what happens 5 months after I retire. When I fall and I break my neck at C4 and C5 and end up paralyzed. So yeah, all of this is just a collage of experiences that I've had in like a 10-year window from my early 50s to my late 50s. And then the last 3 years of how I've navigated through that trauma to turn my life around in a way that I now have hope. I now have a life that is fulfilled. I'm experiencing life with clarity, with confidence, and with courage. And that is a big journey for me in this last 10 years because I was so confused. I was so apprehensive because I just had this fear that if I could lose my son, what else could I lose? What else could happen to me at the snap of a finger? And that caused me to have a lack of courage. It caused me to go within myself and almost cower in fear and not want to engage in life. But anyway, I'm here now, and that's what this story is all about, is about how to overcome the experiences that life throws at you and walk away with faith, hope, and love.
The world doesn't necessarily love talking about feelings. We have all these stigmas. So it's hard enough for many, many people, but for men especially, I thanked you before we started. There is the boys don't cry, the be tough, be macho. How did you, especially being a first responder, break from that and choose this path of being so open?
Well, my life's been very transparent for quite some time. Many, many years ago, I struggled with an addiction. And in that addiction is where I think I first came to understand just how my thoughts and my beliefs have created an environment where I was now betraying the love of my life. And it was through that process of waking up and becoming aware of my circumstance and allowing that circumstance to teach me rather than condemn me, allowing that circumstance to give me feedback into the choices that I was making rather than allowing it to condemn me or criticize me as being worthless, hopeless, and of no value. And so through the addictive cycles, that's what I initially learned. Now that was, oh my goodness, that was uh, 22 years ago now that I came to that realization. And in the process of doing that, um, my wife was pregnant with our third child. And so here I was navigating this life circumstance of being an addict and being married to the woman who was my answered prayer. I literally prayed that she would come into my life. I literally prayed for her physical appearance and what it would look like. I literally prayed for how she would respond and react with me. And at the end of that, I asked her, but most importantly, I pray that she will help me become the man I need to be, the man of God that I was intended to be. And then all of a sudden, all my addiction stuff started to surface. And as my addiction started to surface, I started to realize that I had a lot of trauma in my past that need to be dealt with. And so I did. For 3 years, I got involved with a mentorship program. I got involved with psychology. I got involved with other individuals struggling through that circumstance of life, the addiction cycle, and was able to work through that. And then my daughter was born at the end of that cycle. And it was a sign to me that God was good, that he had walked me through what most people would be destroyed by and what I was destroyed by for over 10 years. My wife forgave me. We ended up having a baby. The baby was a little girl that we had prayed for. So we'd had 2 boys, and now we've got this third, our little girl. And we named her Victoria as a sign of our victorious marriage and being victorious over the challenges that our marriage had faced, which was sexual addiction. And that's a challenge that, man, a lot of homes are dealing with, especially in today's time, especially post COVID, when everybody was locked into their homes and all they had was internet. And there's this huge uptick that has happened as a result. So that was then. That was 22 years ago. Well, then you fast forward to what happened with my son. Here it is. I mean, is this the time to get into the story? You want me to share it?
Of course.
Okay. So having learned those tools, life was good. Life was, I mean, my wife and I were connected at a level we had never been connected before. Our marriage was just flourishing. Our relationship was not only impacting our lives, but it was impacting the lives of people around us. People were coming to us for help. People were coming for us for answers. People were coming to us when they were struggling. And so we were walking this path of what felt like to me just enlightenment. I was feeling relief. I was feeling a sense of freeness. I was experiencing life at a level that I was connected. I was connected with God. I was connected with my family. I was connected with my wife and my kids, and everything was just smooth. And then all of a sudden, 7 days before Christmas, 2013, we got the knock that every parent fears. And that knock was from the sheriff's department, and they asked if we were the parents of Michael Cheatham. And what came next rocked my world and set me on a course for the next 10 years that literally took me out. It almost literally took me out. And he said, "We regret to inform you, but your son Michael was killed last night." And life stopped. It just stopped. Where do you go when you hear those words? You know, the feelings you experience when you hear the words that your son, your firstborn son, was killed. And then you later find out he was killed by somebody he knew. He was killed by somebody who betrayed his trust. And he was stolen from us in the heat of a moment where a guy made a decision that for whatever reason, it was better to kill Mike to get what he wanted rather than try to figure out what the heck was going on in his mind that he could actually come to a place where that could be an option. Well, we learned to navigate it. Unfortunately, I didn't always do it the best way. As a man, I kind of recoiled into my profession. I kind of discounted the emotion. I figured that, I'd have to figure out how to get through it. My wife was going to grief counseling. We had gone to grief counseling together. Our family had done grief counseling. We were involved with other parents who had lost their children. We were in that community where healing takes place. And I thought I was at a place where I had forgiven the man for doing what he did. I thought that I was able to navigate life and I had forgiven him. And so now it was on to let's let life take its course and see what happens. And so I buried myself into work. I was the union president. So we had a lot of internal struggles that we were dealing with within the organization. So it gave me an opportunity to just dive deep into an exterior motive or modality of dealing with my grief. And that was just stay busy, Rick. As long as you stay busy, you won't have to really think about all of this crap that's coming up for you. You won't have to think about how you were robbed of your son's life. You won't have to think about how unfair that is that you have to lose your child after all you've been through already, after all of the growth that you've had in your relationship with your wife and with others, only to be hit with somebody taking the most precious thing you have in your life away from you, and that is your offspring. Your family tree, your legacy was ripped out from underneath us. And as I started to see what that was doing to my children, I became more infuriated, because it's one thing for me at, in my early 50s, and now I'm into my mid 50s navigating this with my life experience and the lessons I've been able to learn. I could see myself navigating it and eventually having an outcome that I needed. But to watch my younger children, my son, who was, 21 at the time that his brother was murdered, they were best friends. They were so close. They were 1 year apart in age. And he just lost everything that compassed his life, which was his brother. My daughter, who was 13 at the time, was just entering into puberty, and she's got all kinds of emotions that she's dealing with already as a fact of just being a young woman. And now she's got to deal with the horrific and tragic loss of her son at the hand of some man that didn't give two thoughts about what that impact would have on his little sister. And I watched my kids just literally spin out of control, and it just broke my heart. And it broke my heart at a level that I became more angry and more furious and more resentment set in. And I was justified to have that anger, and I held on to it. And, a lot of times life happens to us. There's situations and circumstances that happen that experience creates a belief system in us. It creates a way of navigating any other circumstances that come our way. So what I started to notice was, rather than forgiving this man, although I went through the motions, I said the words, the results were showing that that was not the truth. What the truth is I was hurting and I was angry, and the rage was building up in me. And so there was this undertone of everything that I was having in my life. It had this undertone of resentment, of anger, of hostility. And so my tone was off. My body language was off. My mind and the thoughts that I kept having were fixed on the emotion of anger, resentment, bitterness, rage. And so as much as I was trying to fake it on the outside, uh, it was coming out in ways that I didn't even realize were happening. Um, right after I retired, uh, my daughter moved to Denver, Colorado, and she ended up moving into an apartment complex. And my wife and I were scheduled to come out there on a weekend and help her prepare her home, get it all set up. I was going to put some shelves in for her, and just do the things that you do to set up your daughter or your son when they move out for the first time, and want to make their experience as pleasurable and as much fun as possible. So my wife and I decided we were going to go out there and help her with that, along with my son. And we started getting phone calls that her next door neighbor, who had just moved in, was probably 10 years her senior, single man, was starting to make unwanted gestures and comments towards my daughter and her roommate, who were both just 21 years old. They were just young kids, 20 years old, I should say. So I started to feel like this guy is trying to victimize my family yet again by doing things to my daughter. And I started, 1,500 miles away, I started to think in my mind, okay, what's going to happen if I have an encounter with this guy? Surely he won't try to say those things when I'm around. I've already lost one son, and I'll be damned if I'm going to let some guy do something like this to my daughter. All these thoughts were in my head. So we end up making that trip out there. And towards the end of the trip, this guy comes out and he starts making a play on my wife. Started to talk to her about what our daughter is doing and the type of person that she really is. And he just started to attack my wife at a level that was just inappropriate. It was just inappropriate. And so my son heard that, so he jumped in. So now you've got two young men who are engaged in a heated argument, and my son's protecting my wife, and my wife yells down to me, who I was, downstairs in the car, what was going on. So I ran upstairs, because I'll be damned if I'm going to let this happen to my family. I've already been a victim of somebody's stupidity and somebody's evil character, and I'm not going to let it happen again. And so I come up and I confront the guy. And to my surprise, this guy was carrying a concealed weapon, and he pulled it out on me and he pointed it at my head. And now I'm furious. Not only did he come out to make a play and try to get my family involved in this situation, but he had an intent because he was carrying a weapon just in case it got out of control. And I'm just an old man, just retired, but having the emotional baggage of what had happened to my son. Now I'm in a place where if you pulled that gun, you better know how to use it and you better be prepared to use it. So I charged him, and he ran down half a flight of stairs. And when he got down to the platform there, he turned around, he racked his gun and pointed it at me again. But this time it was racked. And it had a round in it. And I sat at the top of that stair looking down at him. And I said, pull the trigger, you. And I probably used some language that's inappropriate for your audience. And I just dared him to do it because I had this undertone of anger and resentment that I didn't care anymore. I didn't care what happened to me. I didn't care what was going on at the time. But meanwhile, my family's just distraught behind me. The fear coming out of them, the yelling, the screaming, the chaos that was happening behind me, I had completely tuned it out. And all I was focused in on was this guy, this gun, and whether or not he had the cojones to pull the trigger. And I'm here today because he didn't. He didn't pull the trigger. I was able to back off, regain my composure, call the police, get all that stuff worked out. The guy ended up going to jail. He ended up losing his gun. He ended up getting kicked out of the apartment. We ended up moving my daughter out of that apartment that weekend to a safer environment, got it all set up, and then we went home. Didn't even think didn't even think another thought about it. It was just one of those things. See, that son of a gun did this, and I'll tell you what, I'll protect my family, and that ain't going to happen to my kids again. I will stand the gap, and I will kill anybody that comes towards my children. I will stand in the way, and they've got to come through me. That was my mentality. And I come home. Now, mind you, I've been retired now for just 5 months. Come home to Nashville, Tennessee, where we had just bought this home. We converted the bottom half into an Airbnb. I had all this work I had to get accomplished to get this new business up and running. And on May 1st, 2021, at 1 in the morning, I came back from the bathroom. I wish it was a more courageous and noble attempt at my justifying this injury, but I fell, passed out, I fell, and I broke my neck at C4 and C5 and was paralyzed from the chest down and hospitalized for the next 2.5 months. They did surgery. They put my neck back together. I've got 2 rods and 12 pins that are now holding my neck fused in position so that it will never break again. It's probably the strongest part of my body now. But now I'm left paralyzed from the chest down. And now all of the thoughts of the why me, this isn't fair. Now I'm not only angry and bitter and resentful, but now I don't even have the ability to protect my family anymore. So now I'm feeling useless and hopeless and despair and like life's not fair. This should not be happening to me. I deserve better than this. I didn't cause this. Somebody else did this to me, this to our family. And all I'm doing is defending my family and my honor. But now with this broken neck, all of these thoughts are coming back, and it's just causing me to become more and more reclusive. I start to pull back into myself, and I start to become more fearful about life because now all this stuff's happening out there, and I really can't do anything to protect myself or my family anymore. So a lot of this fear started to come back. And I remember thinking in rehabilitation, when they asked me, what do you want to accomplish? I remember thinking at the time, the only thing I wanted to do was to be able to walk out of the hospital. So for that 2.5 months, we were able to go to work. I had the mindset that was right. My wife was taking care of me. She had created this beautiful environment for me with music and with essential oils and with just the way that my body was positioned. I mean, she had created this environment that was conducive to healing. Then I had all my friends from Southern California flying out 2,000 miles to Nashville to be with me every step along the way. So I was having all this tremendous support. And then I got out of the hospital, actually walked out, and then everybody went home and I was left to just think about what was going on with me. And that's when I had that flood of emotion that I just described come back over me. And I spent the next year just feeling sorry for myself, just being a victim of my circumstances and asking the ultimate question, why me? And I got to a place where I needed to change that paradigm. And one of the things I started to do was to start focusing back on the mindset and the mind shift that it took me to overcome my addiction 20 plus years ago. And as I started to do that work, I came into contact with a young man by the name of Nick Santanastasso. And Nick Santanastasso has no legs and he has one arm, but yet he is probably one of the most exhilarating speakers on the planet when it comes to overcoming adversity. Here's a man born with no legs and one arm teaching me how to be useful in life. So I heard Nick speak, and one of the things that he kind of walks you through is he gets you thinking about what emotion is it that you feel the most about yourself. And as I'm thinking about that, useless was the emotion I came up with. I mean, immediately I feel useless. I don't have the use of my hands like I once did. I don't have the use of my body. I'm still numb from the chest down. I get muscle spasms all the time. So I just don't feel useful. So at the end of that exercise, he asked if there was any volunteers that would like to come forward and share with the audience what they were thinking. And my hand went up and he picked me and I went up and talked to him. When he heard that my emotion, that I felt like I was useless, he asked me this question: do you think I'm useless? And I said, well, of course not. I mean, you have value. Look what you're doing. You have an audience where you're helping people navigate life. And he says, well, I was just curious, Rick, because you seem to put a lot of value on the function of your body so that you can be resourceful and you could be useful and that you could have a validity to life. But yet I have no legs and one arm and you think I'm useless. He says, I'm just curious. What makes you useless, but yet I can be useful? And it was just like the question was asked so perfectly that it caused me to think. And he took away every excuse that I had. And I sat there in amazement thinking, almost embarrassing, how a guy with all of his arms, all of his legs, his body works. I'm totally independent now. I can walk, I can drive, I can function. I just can't do it the way I used to. How is it that you're standing in front of a guy with no legs and one arm who was born that way, and you're on your pity party about how bad life is? What he didn't know at the time was, but wait a second, you don't understand, man. It was 7 years ago that I lost my son tragically to a murder. So you don't understand what I've been going through for the last 10 years. It started with the murder of my son, and now it ended with a broken neck. That's why I feel useless. I deserve to feel useless. I deserve to feel justified in my anger and my bitterness and, the woe is me mentality. But having that come from a guy with no legs and one arm, it rocked my world. And it caused me to go back inside and say, okay, what are you really thinking? What is really going on with you, Rick? And so what I discovered was this: life is going to happen. And there is nothing we can do to control it. I mean, we could do our best to try to control the circumstances of life, but we can't control what other people do. I could not control the fact that that man murdered my son. I could not control the fact that this man moved next door to my daughter and was intimidating her to the point where she was fearful to even come outside. I couldn't control the fact that I broke my neck. I just fell. I passed out. I had no control. I just passed out and broke my neck. So when life happens to you, you get one of two things that are before you. You can choose to look at that through the lens of doubt, anxiety, fear, justification, more anger, more resentment. And when you do that, you create this experience, and that experience validates your belief that you're justified. And so your mind wants to always look out there into the future and look for experiences that reinforce that behavior and that choice and that belief system that you have. And so all those things that I was going out and doing, whether that was, dealing with my work at the level that I had to deal with it, dealing with how I processed Mike's murder, dealing with how I dealt with the guy who moved in next door to my daughter, or how I navigated through my broken neck, I was validating that, yep, life sucks. Yep, I'm a victim. Yep, this is happening to me. And I'm not sure why, but it's making me angry. Now, that's one way we can look at life. And that's the normal way that we all do. We take our experiences, we turn them into beliefs, and those beliefs then, in many cases, navigate our life on autopilot. We don't even think about it. They just come up. We're programmed to believe a certain way from the ages of like 1 to 8, I think it is. And it's all subconscious programming that we don't even know why it happens to us. We don't even know why we do what we do half the time. We just do it based off of quote unquote instinct, but it's all based on a belief pattern. So when I went through the addictive cycle, I knew I had to change the belief pattern. So I started looking at, how do I look at the murder of my son, my children and them dealing with how they're navigating life as a result, and then becoming disabled with a broken neck, and find meaning and purpose in that. Because that's what I had to do with addiction. I had to find meaning and purpose behind why I was an addict, why I was turning to pornography instead of turning to my faith with anticipation that I was going to overcome it. So all that to say, I started looking at life through a different lens. I started to look at life, instead of this happening to me and becoming a victim of it, what if I changed the question? What can I do to empower myself and others through this experience? Totally different change in the question. Before it was, why me? Why is this happening to me? Now it's, what can I do to be more fulfilled and have a purpose behind this so that I can help others and empower them to go through the same challenges that life throws at them? And it completely changed the way I started looking at my situation. What it did it allowed me to look through the lens of faith, the lens of anticipation, the lens of positive emotion, the lens of love, rather than through that lens of fear that was cycling me into my demise, my breakdown. And as I started to do that, what I noticed was fantastic. What I noticed was incredible. As I started to look at life through that, I started to have these emotions of exhilaration, emotions of purpose, emotions of passion, emotions that excited me to get up in the morning, emotions that invigorated me. It empowered me because the love that I was looking out through that filter with was now looking for opportunities to empower others through their journey, through the empowering that I gave myself through my journey. And so it opened the door for people that were dealing with issues in their own life to come and ask me, how do you have such peace with what you've been through for the last 10 years? And so, well, let me explain how my peace came about. And I get to give them the foundation behind where my peace comes from. You know, as we look at life and all those challenges, here's the dilemma that we're faced with. When we make that choice to be empowering, that means we also make the choice that we have to go in and disempower all the beliefs that have led us to this point. And so I had a lot of limiting beliefs as a result of my injury and the result of my son's murder. And a lot of fear was built up around that. And as that fear started to be unleashed, I started to experience things that I didn't like. And so I had to make a choice. And that is the fundamental difference between those who are stuck in the cycle of being victimized and those who are in the cycle of being faithful with anticipation, looking how your experiences in life are going to not only help serve your need, but serve the need of others so they can navigate it with the same clarity, confidence, and courage that you did. And now my entire journey is based on helping other people navigate that life of victimhood. And when I look at where I was just 3 short years ago and where I am today, they're two different people. I'm not the same person I once was. In fact, my bonus mom, she told me one time, she said, I've noticed that there's not that undertone of anger in how you approach life now. And she says, it's a beautiful thing to see. She was so impressed that I had been able to overcome that hurdle. So why do we go through these things? You know, what is its purpose? You know, why did I have to have my son killed? Why? I mean, why did he have to be murdered? Why did I have to break my neck? Why did I have to deal with Denver the way that I had to deal with it to protect my daughter? And that's because it taught me how to love unconditionally. It taught me how to just stop and ponder on a fundamental principle that I think I had forgotten. When I was struggling with my addiction and betrayed my wife the levels that I had betrayed her, she forgave me unconditionally. And as a result of that unconditional love and that forgiveness, we were able to navigate a beautiful relationship together. So here I am now, 22 years later, dealing with the same issue, but from a different perspective. Could I really forgive the man that murdered my son? And as much as I thought I could, I really hadn't. And so, like a snake bite, this murderer bit me. And, my snake is now off and gone for the rest of his life. He'll never see daylight again as a free man. But the poison he released on me through that snake bite was resentment, bitterness, anger, hostility, justified victimization. I was justified to be a victim. And I had to let it go. I had to finally get to a place where I had to let all that venom go. And I had to come to the conclusion that my wife did many, many years ago when she forgave me for betraying her trust. It reminded me going all the way back to the scene of the cross of Jesus Christ when he hung on the cross and he said, Father, forgive them for they know not what they do. They're the ones that put him on the cross. They're the ones that did that to him. But yet he said, forgive them for they know not what they do. I had to get to that place and forgive the murderer of my son because he didn't know what he was doing. He didn't know the effect it was going to have on me or my family. He didn't know the effect it was going to have on him or his family. He didn't know what his greediness was going to do to him and how that would affect so many other people downstream from that choice that he made December 18th, 2013, to take my son's life. So the question I have now that I pose to all my friends, family, and anybody that I work with closely is, what snake in your life has bitten you so hard that you've got to forgive and let it go? Because until we're able to do that, life will continue to spiral in the way that validates who we think we are. And it's painful. And you have to suffer. Relationships become strained. Work becomes difficult. It's hard to focus when life is spinning out of control. And so what I've been able to do now is I teach 3 fundamental principles on how I navigated my emotional destruction. And I take it from a training that I did when I was in the fire service, that when you are faced with a mass casualty event, so you're responding to an emergency, and when you get there, it's a mass casualty emergency. Multiple patients, multiple victims, multiple chaos, multiple confusion. There's just a scene of utter chaos. So go make a difference. Okay. Well, to the untrained eye, how do you do that? How do you go when you see everybody screaming and everybody in turmoil? Where do you prioritize your efforts? What do you do first? And so the teaching that we were given was you start where you stand. So the minute I got out of my rig, the first person I came in connection with, that was my first patient. So I started where I stand, and we had a triage system. So we went through an algorithm that triaged whether this patient was going to either be a minor, a moderate, or an immediate patient. And then we would set up our scenario, we'd set up our scene, and we'd start to go to business. Well, the start where you stand model is what I fell back on when I navigated through my turmoil. I started where I stand. What's the first thing I saw, Rick? Well, I saw my mindset. I saw my mind was not where I needed it to be to navigate this turmoil with the most efficient and effective, empowering way for me to not only get over it, for others to do the same. And so
you mentioned something because I don't want to hear only the story and not get to point out some key things. You a few times said I had such an amazing support system.
mm-hmm.
And there are probably people listening and watching that don't. What do we do? What do we say to those people? Because I also had family and friends that were coming from all over to lift me up. But there are people who really don't have that. And I know your answer will be similar to what mine would be. But for anybody listening in that struggle that's feeling alone and really doesn't have people to lean on, what?
Well, you know, when all my friends went back to California and my wife went back to work, I didn't have any support. My support system was working. They were busy. They were doing their thing. So the only thing I had were my thoughts. So I was wrestling with my thoughts, my belief systems, my victim mentality. And even if you don't have a support system, my wife was to the point where she was ready to walk out on me because I was so stuck in my emotional pain and suffering that it affected her.
Mm-hmm.
And she sat me down and said, look, if you don't work through this thing, I didn't stick around all these years only for it to end this way. You need to pull yourself together and you need to figure this out and get working through it rather than sitting here and feeling sorry for yourself. Now that's a support system in and of itself. It's motivating and pushing me, but I really didn't have my friends from California out here anymore. It was just me here in Nashville, and I have a very small support system out here. I have my sister and my mom and their her family, my sister's family, and my wife. And that was pretty much it. So even if you don't have the support system that I had that helped me get up and walk out of the hospital, that gave me that kind of support, the support system that you do have is yourself. And you can rely on your own ability to critically think through things and get the help you need. You can enroll with therapy. You can enroll with people helping coach you. You can enroll with communities of people who are struggling the same way you do for support and for inspiration and for validation that you are where you are and it's okay. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just how you navigate through the belief systems that you still have, many of which are running unconsciously in the subconscious mind based off of what you experienced between ages 1 and 8. So the support system at that point becomes a choice I get to make. Do I even choose to have a support system? And if I choose not to have a support system, then I choose to remain stuck in my victim mentality. So it all comes down to, again, a choice. And
how can you connect with you if they're listening and thinking, what if you could be my support?
Absolutely. My program is designed to get people like that working through a 3-step process. And the best way to do that is to contact me and let's schedule just a 30-minute free intake call where we get to discuss what it is that's going on. So you can reach me through my email. That's the best source. It's rkconsulting292 at gmail.com. rkconsulting292 at gmail.com. You can reach out to me on Facebook and private message me. My handle on Facebook is just Rick Cheatham. Just look up for Rick Cheatham. And then on Instagram, it's Ricky C AFD. So RICKYC AFD for Anaheim Fire Department.
I'm smirking. I knew what that. I have friends who are in, and I was like, that's a fire department email.
That's a fire department email. And it used to be my email. But those are the 3 ways primarily. And then once we get the intake, then you'll have my phone number and then we can get on with a plan that will be custom made just for you over the course of a 30 to 90 day window, depending on what we think we agree on and what you might need. And then we just start a coaching, mentoring process that helps you navigate similar to what I navigated. and it gets you
At
open.
the end of 30 days, we're done and I can't.
No, it's not that. It's just that we give people the opportunity that you work, and if you're getting the results, all right, let's just keep moving. But at some point you may think, okay, well, I'm not getting the results I want anymore. And that way we reevaluate and we say, okay, well, let's craft another plan. Let's see where it is that you're stuck. And we start to just unlayer the onion one layer at a time to get down to the core belief that keeps us stuck. My core belief that kept me stuck for those 10 years was I was justified to hold on to the resentment for what this guy did to my family. And that belief stayed true to me. I mean, it was hardwired in there until I was able to finally get to a place where I realized that the poison of resentment and bitterness and anger was killing me. It had nothing to do with the guy who was murdering my son. He's done. But those emotional pains that I had were killing me inside. So yeah, 30, 60, 90 days, even up to a year. I'm in a coaching program right now where I'm coached by a guy for the next year. I stay in his corner so I can navigate my life so that I can help others navigate their life. If your coach doesn't have a coach, get a new coach. That's what I tell them, because
same.
You know, you don't have all the answers. Life is fluid. Things come and go. How we process these things are going to be our state of mind at the time. And there's things I still struggle with. And my coach helps me navigate those things just as much as I help other people navigate where they are.
Thank you. Thank you. That's really, really true, that we're all works in progress. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I see in all different ages, men and women, but it's important to be able to connect with people. And this is so important for men listening. I have a friend who's an attorney who says, I can't ever go to therapy because of my profession. It will not work. And so shattering these stigmas and letting people know that you can connect with Rick, you can work on things yourself until you're ready to reach out. It's huge, because that's a limiting belief that boys don't cry, and that we have to get through it on our own. And so you might not even be familiar with that term, but if reaching out doesn't harm and it doesn't go on your record, no one knows. Right.
Yeah, everything's I mean, it is we protect your identity. It's not just how do you think I felt as a fireman? You know, a fireman going to therapy. I mean, the minute they realize that that's one of the biggest problems in the fire service right now is PTSD. It's killing our firefighters because of the trauma they suffer. It's like a wartime veteran that deals with all of the suffering and casualties of war. And so when I start raising my hand, hey, I might have a little problem with the way that I'm processing my son's grief, and the way that I'm processing my broken neck, and the way I'm processing life, to a firefighter, that could be incriminating, because, well, they think, well, now you've got a mental disorder. Something's wrong with you. You need to be fixed, and we need to probably take you out of your career until you get fixed. And that was a huge problem for not only police and fire, but for the military folks as well. And if that's your belief system, which it's a limiting belief, you will never seek the help you need, because you will always justify the reason why not to, because that's what our mind does. It tries to protect our subconscious beliefs from being validated.
And I'm sure there's an organization through the fire department working really hard to say we need to work with mental health, but it's not every department, and it's not every captain. So it really does depend on where you are and how it's treated. As a world, we're working to that, because you don't even get to put your crisis to bed before the next one comes.
Right. That's exactly right. It's a snowball effect that the pressure never relinquishes. It's a constant pressure on you every day you go to work. And, navigating everybody else's trauma, I can do that in a professional manner. I can divorce myself of the emotion most time. most of the time. But when it's your family, it's your trauma, it's your tragedy, the emotion becomes so real that it affects every decision, it filters every belief system you have from here on out. And going back and doing the internal work of looking at life through the lens of a blessing, looking at life through the gift that life's happening for me so that I can learn from it, so that I can become empowering, not only for my own life, but I can help give that empowering aspect to another person in their life and watch their lives change and watch their legacy completely change from that moment on, and what that's going to do to their children and their children's children. See, we're all faced with those choices every single day. And for your audience that's listening right now, if that's where you are, just remember this one thing. You're only one choice away from turning your entire life around in such a way that it gives you purpose, it gives you passion, and it gives you the power to not only navigate your life, but to be able to do it in such a way that inspires hope for others to do the same. And when you can get those two things coming together, powerful life for yourself and inspiring others to do the same, we will literally start to demolish the destructive behaviors that each of us have to deal with as we come to the thought of what choice I'm going to make today. Am I going to choose to be a victim, or am I going to choose to be victorious? Am I going to choose to live with fear and doubt and anxiety, or am I going to choose to live with faith and hope and anticipation through love? And the only way we can do that is we have to realize that we're all in the same boat together. All of us are navigating life to the best of our ability with the tools we've been taught, with the belief systems that we have embedded in us. And then we just make meaning of every experience that comes along our way. And I
Thank
stopped
you
making
so
meaning today.
much. This is so helpful. And please reach out. Rick Cheatham, best way to contact you again.
My email, rkconsulting292@gmail.com. Facebook, Rick Cheatham.
Show notes too, so don't pull over if you're driving.
Yeah, don't pull over, you're driving. Just remember, Ricky C. AFD. That's an easy one. You can get a hold of me with Instagram. From there, you can find me on Facebook, Rick Cheatham, and RK
Put it all there.
Consulting.
Thank you so much for everything you do and for making time to share your wisdom
Well, I
with
appreciate
my
that.
audience. Thank you. Until next
Thank
time,
you.
everyone,
Thank you,
always be
Samantha.
ruthless.
All right.